Hello and welcome to Mumble, all the structured, poorly researched podcast extravaganza. I'd like to emphasise poorly researched podcast extravaganza. My name is Liam and as always I'm here with my co-host Kayla.
Hi.
Hello Kayla, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm going to get stuck into it. I'm not going to ask you how you are because that's frankly I don't care. I'm kidding, I do care. I just, the listeners don't care because today is a serious topic.
Okay, fair enough.
Depending on where you live, I guess.
It is very serious, guys.
What are we talking about today?
Brexit.
Yay! This is following from our Schrodinger's cat. And what did we do last week?
We did Schrodinger's cat last week.
Yes. I couldn't remember.
Before we did bats.
Oh. So it's maybe not in a sort of trifecta of smart and difficult topics, but we're going to try and hit and talk a little bit more about one that's slightly out of our comfort zones, exactly, and speak a little bit about Brexit. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
We'll see how interesting this one is. Hopefully we get it done and explain a little bit to what people it is, but we'll see. And I guess let's get ready to mumble. Alright, so I'm going to come at you hard from the beginning. What's Brexit?
It means Britain exit.
Good.
Brexit.
Nice.
So to be completely honest, I didn't know this was still a thing. So if we rewind back to 2016, before I moved back to the States, living in Amsterdam, there was the talk about this.
Yeah.
And I really don't understand how it's still going on. But apparently it is. And yes, so that was the whole thing was are they going to leave the EU? Because the Netherlands is pretty, they still are, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are. Yes, they are. And so the EU, funny story, this is just going to be a little side tangent. When Drake and I moved to the Netherlands, Drake had never been out of the country. I had only been, I had been to Greece and I think one other place. I can't remember.
Had you? Mrs. Fancy, traveling the world.
I know. So we moved there.
And one other, I don't know.
I don't remember. I may have been to Mexico.
Oh, you've been out? I said the US. I thought you said you've been to places in Europe.
No, I had been to Greece and then I think Mexico, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
And Drake had never been out of the country. We get there, and so we plan our first trip. I think we went to France, Nice, and so we fly to France, get off the plane, and exit the airport, and we're keep in mind we just had all this visa passport shit to get into the Netherlands because we were moving there. And it's his first time. And when I went to Greece from the US, there was definitely passport stuff I had to do.
Oh, yeah.
So we just walk out. And we're both we're not going to be able to get back into the Netherlands. We didn't get our passport stamped. Mm-hmm. And so we freaked out this entire time because we didn't get our passport stamped. But it's because we were traveling within the EU.
Yeah.
And you don't have to. And so then I really wanted to get my passport full, so that kind of sucked because every time we went to an EU
you can
country,
ask for a stamp, I think.
Can you?
Yeah, you can say, "Can you stamp my thing, please?"
So, but I didn't know that. So then I never got them stamped. So that kind of sucked. But yeah, we were terrified that we weren't getting back into the Netherlands where Sadie was and all of our belongings.
Yeah. I can relate to. I get that fear a little bit when I'm here, when I go in between states, because for me, every time you're on a plane. Even when I was in the EU, you take your passport anyway.
Yeah.
But here, nobody cares. And I know I'm from outside the US, and fair enough, I have a Texas driver's license, but I don't know. It just seems weird that I'm flying about the place. Yeah. Shows you how much fear we've had since 9/11 about planes.
Sure. So yeah, it's just them exiting out of the European Union, and the vote and the referendum, which was the big vote.
Yeah, so what you mentioned there about that free borders or open borders is a big part of the whole story. Mm-hmm. And it definitely plays a part in both the vote of the initial referendum and the continued deadlock that seems to have happened between the British government and the EU. Mm-hmm. So let's take it back to the very beginning. Do you know what the EU is?
The European Union.
Yeah, do you know what the European Union is?
It's a bunch of countries.
Yeah.
And
No, wait, it isn't. So it was proposed or suggested after the World War II, Winston Churchill has been quoted saying he wants to make the United States of Europe, essentially. That's essentially what the concept was. And the idea was that there had been 2 world wars within 50 years, 30 years, through nations that disagreed with each other and had issues. And following from the war, they wanted some way to unite these nations where there'd be less likely or less reasons to go to war.
Okay.
So it started off, I can't remember exactly the early dates, but it was between 1945 and like 1955 or 1957, they constructed the original European Council or something it was called.
Okay.
And that had a number of members, and throughout the next 50 years, it acquired up to 28 members it has today. Which tends to holds some like the biggest countries, some of the biggest and most powerful countries in Europe. France, Germany, Great Britain to an extent, Spain, Italy, Greece, basically all the ones that you would call out if someone said name all the countries in Europe. Not Norway, and not it's just Norway. It's not. I know Norway's definitely not in it because it's not like Anyway. Anyway, so that started. The UK initially applied to get in like 1964 and got denied. Also got denied in 1967, and then finally they were accepted into the European Council in 1973, I think it was. And then, interestingly enough, in 1975 they had their first referendum to leave. For 2 years after being in, they had a referendum, but it was a good 60-40 or 65-35% to stay within the European Union. And from then, Britain has had a number of back and forth with the European Union. I'll discuss why in a moment, regarding issues that the European Union provides. The European Union is split up into 4 different kind of sectors. You've got the Commission, the European Parliament, the Court of Justice, and it must be the European Council. Okay. So the Commission essentially are the people who decide where the money and funds go. And they also create or develop the laws that they want to be the European Union laws that need to be upheld by all 28 countries. The part of the council is people who would provide advice and direction for the European Union, and that's made up of all the nations, a member of parliament from all nations. So basically, that's all 28 nations together in a room, try to fight for what's best for their country. Already sounds like a bit of a cluster. Yeah. Then you have what did I say was next? The Council of European Union? Yes, this is the Council of European Union, which is made up of members of European Parliament. And so that's people who pass the laws. They discuss the laws that have been created and pass it or not. And they're the ones that kind of control a lot of what goes on. So you've got the advice from the Parliament regions, you've got the Commission that give you the laws and decide what the funds do, and then the main Parliament of the European Parliament, which decides what ones get passed and all that sort of stuff. I guess that would be kind of like the Senate here, maybe? I know. Okay. And then you've got the Court of Justice, who enforces essentially all the laws and all the other treaties that kind of get announced. So that's how the European Union works in a kind of really broad sense. What the European Union provides, it varies dramatically, but they have a big influence on trade. So we've spoken about that. So essentially, a big part of it is everything that we trade between Europe is easily open. So you've got all these borders. So therefore, all tariffs and duty and all this stuff traveling between borders is removed. So I can make a car in Germany, get to Britain with minimal or like set taxes, and I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about passing through France first and all these sort of things. And it's the same going to any of these 28 countries. On top of that, you've got the free markets. That's the trade agreements, as we mentioned there. You also have the open borders, which means anyone in Europe can travel to any other country in Europe without requiring anything. They can live there, they can practice any professions there, all that sort of stuff. What else is they provide aid. A lot of money within the European Union goes towards aid to help other countries and to help countries within the union itself. They've obviously developed the euro, which was introduced in 97 or something, I think. And I think 17 out of the 28 countries currently use the euro.
This is what to ask. They don't have to use it, though, do they?
Well, it was pushed that they wanted everyone to use it. 19, I think, of the countries use it. But it wasn't mandatory, obviously, because 9 of them don't use it. It was to help with trade and the sort of exchange of money throughout these countries. You know, if you don't have to have exchange rates, things. However,
a lot easier.
There has been recently, especially in 2007, we had sort of downturn on the market where you had Poland, Greece, Italy, and Spain, and Ireland a little bit. It was Ireland, not Italy. Anyway, suffer big issues with the drop in the market and the euro dropped and all this sort of stuff. So some people would say it was smart not to go into it. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of other things, but everything you can think of essentially that the government provides, the European Union has created a mass kind of structure for that.
Energy infrastructure.
Yep, France has a lot of nuclear energy, and a lot of Britain's energy comes from France. That happens all around. Yeah, so that's good. The infrastructure, you're right.
Healthcare.
Yep, healthcare is slightly strange because each country has their own, obviously, set healthcare, but they will aid each other. For example, I can go to France, Netherlands, Spain, whatever, and because I have the NHS, I can go to the hospital there. They will take care of me, and they will easily kind of get their funds back, whatever, from the NHS. That also has other implications, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So that's essentially what the European Union is. So what essentially happened, so just to go a little bit of Britain's history with the EU, a big part of what the EU does is it provides, not reimbursement, but it helps. If you have a lot of land mass where you're farming, and because of that farm, if you use that land for farming and then you bring that food and use it towards the European market, you can get a big reimbursement or bursary. You can get money from the government to help with that. Okay, but the less land you have, essentially you end up having to pay more to trade and sell that produce than it would be to not. Then, so for example, France is much larger, so they get reimbursed more money for agriculture than Britain even have the potential to do. So so there's a little bit of that's not fair. And in the early 80s, Margaret Thatcher argued with the European Union, we were paying up to 20% of the money that went into the European Union, and we were the third poorest country at that time. So there was a big argument on why we're doing this. So she reduced it down to 12%, which is what we currently pay. We give the European Union funds that they have, we pay 12% of that, apparently. That's what I'm reading. So that's the type of structure, that constriction which European Union holds us to, because they try to make it good for everyone. But obviously some people are going to suffer when everything's good for everyone. It's a communist type thing. It's everything can't be good for everyone. Further from that, in the 90s and early 2000s, Tony Blair had back and forth European Union about the same agricultural type thing, and then we had mad cow disease. So therefore, European Union stopped buying beef altogether. So we couldn't sell beef to the European Union, and a lot of them have been lifted now, like 2007 or something, they were lifted. So they'll start buying it again, but even France still refuse, I don't know if it's still today, refuse to buy our beef. So a big part of our agricultural trade was stopped by European Union because they didn't want to, and it's fine, obviously, and it's just due to the way it kind of works. So we were limited by what we could trade. So then we were losing even more money because we wouldn't get that reimbursement for the stuff we did have. And then on top of that, they put restrictions in that favour some people and others. For example, the British chocolate industry. We have Cadbury's, we have Mars and Snickers, and a lot of big foods, and it's really good chocolate. But you're competing with Belgium and France and Germany, who are world renowned for making chocolate, and they believe chocolate has to be a certain way, where UK make it differently. So they're like, this can't be marketed as chocolate, it's a kitchen highly milk chocolate type additive type thing, it's not got as many cocoa beans and all these sort of stuff. So there was a big restriction on the UK chocolate, and we couldn't, up until 2007, we couldn't sell UK chocolate in Europe. And due to that, we stopped buying some of their chocolates. So when I was younger, you'd always bring chocolate back from Europe because you wouldn't get it here, and vice versa. But then after 2007, it was more back and forth. You can get Cadbury's there now, and vice versa. You can get Milka. You know Milka, the purple one? So we couldn't get that before 2007. Oh, we could, but we wouldn't because we were stubborn. Anyway, that's the sort of restrictions that European Union holds. And I say it as restrictions as though, oh, they're only bad, but they're not. They are good. They do provide benefits. You do have this big open market and this, trade agreements and this free travel and all these things. Anyway, so David Cameron's discussions with them, who was the Prime Minister before Theresa May, who's currently the Prime Minister. He had back and forths trying to reorganise our agreement within the European Union, and I'm trying to think what was the actual catalyst for it. I think he was trying to choose how much we could vote on certain topics. So very rarely would anybody, I think something get to a point where a big country voted against it, vetoed it. And he started vetoing some policies for the European Union, and then that has built onto, and that was in the early 2000s, and that's built onto what it is now. So come 2016, I think it was they were talking about border control, and then David Cameron wanted to stop or limit the border accessibility.
That's the whole big thing with ISIS was big, and
yes,
yeah, because I remember
this is gonna be a long episode, by the way. Huh? This is gonna be a long episode, by the way.
Yeah, I keep having all these stories. Even in when we would travel to Belgium and even in Amsterdam, Netherlands wasn't really that scary, but Belgium for sure. We were Drake went on a business trip one day, and they locked down a bunch of stuff because everything that was going on. And then we were traveling. We were in the UK when a train station or airport, something got blown up in Belgium. That just seemed to be the epicenter of it.
Yeah.
But then refugees kept they would come to the Netherlands and all over, and so I think that was where a lot of that came from. Just not trying to keep the refugees out, but just trying to maintain the safety of the people who were already in.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of fear was brought into people for multiple reasons. So people from Eastern Europe, which is the main population that are doing this, but you can get from Asia and Africa, and here it's Mexico. You get people gradually working their way up to where they want to stay, and we've had people from Africa transfer over to Spain and Greece. We've had people from Eastern Europe, moving to Czech Republic and then into Germany and then working out the way across. And that's what you're talking about, the refugees. And we've been slowly having these caravans of asylum seekers moving throughout Europe freely, can't get stopped, legally can't get stopped, and moving towards borders of countries who, for whatever reason, aren't welcome. So that was a big catalyst towards what happened in the referendum itself. In particular, is a caravan that's been working its way up through Europe and is on the French border beside Eurotunnel right now, and constantly there's still the battles now of them trying to get across. Very similar how you see or you hear about Mexicans or South Americans getting up into Texas or California, and it's. Now, whether we should take them on is something we'll get to in a moment, but that was a big part of the fears of why people wanted to leave Europe. There's also things along the lines of people in smaller towns felt like there was an elitist attitude, and the rich were getting richer from Europe, but these small town farmers didn't see the benefits. They want gaining anything from Europe, and the only thing they may have not been losing out, but they don't know. Maybe they could get a better deal without Brexit. And it always seemed that when things were decided, it was only getting worse, and there was only more tariffs being put on and more constriction with what they can do and produce. Whether it's health and safety laws, environmental laws, all these things are coming in, and these small farmers who can't afford to make these changes are suffering, or whoever the small businesses. So there was a lot of the parts around the UK that didn't have money were well, why not? I feel like I don't have any say within my own government. Why would I want someone controlling the government which I already don't have say in?
Yeah.
Because, as we mentioned, the European Union was getting more to the point where it was controlling everything.
Yeah.
It controls our environmental protocols, it controls our emissions, it controls our energy, it controls our trade, it controls our finances for some reason. We were losing the sovereignty of our nation. We felt like we didn't have control of it anymore. Similar to how sometimes people here in Texas, for example, want to leave the US because they feel like the federal government has more control than they want to give them.
Yeah.
And it's a similar thing, it's like, are you state proud or are you national pride? Where's the patriotism? Is it, and we kind of feel that a bit, it was felt a bit in Britain, that we didn't have say, as in our governments are really closely voted for anyway. Like the previous government before the current one was actually had to be two parties come together to create a large enough divide. Is that what I'm saying? So like they had like a 47% plus a 12%, which equaled 50 whatever percent, which made them win the vote, and they had a coalition. Okay. So we're already very close. So we had minimal say. So there's a large part of the population has a minimal say in the government, and on top of that, then we have 1 in 28th say within the European Union.
Yeah.
And even that is decided by one person who's coming from that one government which you didn't vote for in the first place. So there's like 4 degrees of separation between you and what's actually getting implemented in your world, and it's no longer, appeasing the masses. That's where the struggle was. With that being said, there was a lot of Anyway, I'm mumbling on a whole bunch of stuff. Essentially, that's what it came down to for the initial vote. So on 23rd of June 2016, Britain had a vote to, simple as one question: do we stay or do we leave? It wasn't. In hindsight, you probably maybe specify some of this stuff a bit better, put more kind of what if type situations, but it was a yes or no. And they voted, and to the surprise of a lot of people, a lot of politicians, most people, most of the media thought, it's not going to happen. Yeah. They were like, okay, we'll vote, but come on, everyone knows. And that was maybe part of the downfall, because it encouraged people who would vote to remain not to vote, because why bother, because we're going to win anyway. Yeah. So on the 23rd, on the 24th, or whenever the council finished, it came out that 51.8% was to leave, and 48.2% was left to vote to leave. So that's the narrowest of margins.
Yeah.
However, you did have a massive, about 70% of people voted that could vote. So that's about 30 million people, which is probably one of our biggest voting out turnouts that we've ever had, probably ever had, actually, considering the population only grows, really. So then we had to leave. So following that, there was a number of different things that happen. You have to decide on leave dates. We had to decide on, we had to invoke the Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, which basically says, gives us the right to leave the European Union under certain circumstances. So that happened, and then we decided a leave date of March the 12th. I think it was March the 12th, 2019, which takes us on to how to leave Brexit.
Man, it took 2 years to figure out how to leave.
Well, we're not even leaving yet. So,
oh my god!
Can you quickly round up what I've talked about why it came to the point where we're leaving?
Yes.
Just I got a short summary, so I know that I haven't just gibbered on.
Yes. So basically, everybody was in the European Union, but then, I do have a separate question, but we'll get to that in a second. But so UK was in the European Union, but because of not immigration, kind of like, I guess it would be called immigration, but refugees and things like that, border patrol type things, safety, but more importantly, like the lower classes feeling like they're not getting heard because of the different stances, not stances, but like separation between the governments. Yeah. That's why there was the vote, and then nobody thought it would happen, and it did. Yeah. But question. So I remember being in Ireland and them talking about leaving the UK if this happened.
So we're going to get onto this in a moment. Scotland again. We had a referendum to whether we stay or leave the UK in 2000 and I want to say 12, but I can't remember. I think it was 2012, and we voted yes to stay in. One of the big reasons for that, or one that was a kind of definite push, is if we leave, we may not be immediately taken into the European Union, so we're going to lose all trade deals. We're going to lose all the stuff that we like about the European Union. So that was a big reason to stay within. And then 2 years later, we have a referendum to leave. So Scotland's like, well, fuck, we want another referendum so we can actually leave because we want to stay in the European Union. And but be like, well, if we do leave, will we be automatically taken in now? We don't know. So
so that's still up in the air with.
I think until this is sorted, Scotland won't get that sorted.
Yeah.
Northern Ireland's slightly different, which again I'll get onto in a moment. But it's not quite got the same separation power, I don't believe, as Scotland does. But because even Scotland was a bit like, I don't know if we can actually do this, but let's have a go.
Okay.
Yeah. So that what you described is essentially right. If you look at the map of Britain and look where decided yes and decided no, Scotland entirely said no, remain. Northern Ireland, some parts said leave, the majority said stay. Scotland was actually almost up to, some areas, like the place where I lived in Edinburgh, was up to 75% people wanted to remain, which is a considerable amount compared to 50-50. Most of London, the whole of the London area, essentially most of it, was all remain, and other parts, England, but then the rest, especially the working class, the farm, not all of them entirely, but some of them, obviously enough, were leave. That's what came about.
Honestly, it reminds me of... Never mind.
What's it remind you of?
No.
Okay.
I don't want to get into that.
So, we were due to leave on the 29th of March 2019, 2 years after it started.
Okay.
We invoked the Article 50, which I mentioned, of the EU's Lisbon Treaty, which is the exit process, or what kind of starts the exit process. And during that process, we need to discuss how we're going to leave the EU. I say we, I'm referring to me as Britain. Mm-hmm. So what has to take place then is our Parliament needs to confer or discuss with the EU, the leaders of the different countries and the Parliament itself, the EU Parliament, when Europe leaves, what things are going to be sorted out. Like, what trade agreements can we have? Do we hold? Do we not hold? Mm-hmm. What's going to happen to different supplies of medicine and aid? How's that going to be the same? What's going to happen with the finances? What's going to happen with
people who are now living abroad?
Yeah, that's a big thing. I will maybe get onto some of that again. But yeah, so many people from Britain live abroad, and on the reverse side, so many Europeans live in Britain. Mm-hmm. So there was a whole bunch of different things. Open borders was a massive one. In fact, it's huge. It's probably one of the biggest sticking points. Mm-hmm. So it went back and forth. Theresa May put together a plan of our withdrawal deal, and it was proposed to the EU, and it was discussed back and forth numerous times. And I believe in November 2018, it was agreed by the EU that the proposal she took was accepted. Mm-hmm. So that proposal has been written up and somewhat agreed within. Agreed within the UK Parliament, and it's agreed with the EU. So now, bring it home, implement it, done.
Okay.
However, bringing that agreement then needs to go past our Parliament one more time to be approved before we can head it off. Mm-hmm. A couple of things, and that's where the sticking point has been. Since the start of this year, there has been 2 major votes and 1 kind of smaller, divided vote. Both of these has been unanimous, or not unanimously, but majorly denied, mm-hmm. with something like 300 plus out of 420 or something, and both of them. So people are very much against, or they don't agree to what's going on. Mm-hmm. One of the big things is the transition period. So the transition period would be how quickly these effects and these decisions that have been made within this withdrawal process, a withdrawal plan is going to take place. The EU have put a hard stamp down saying everything needs to be done by the end of the year 2020. Was it April 2020? I think it's December 31st, 2020, which only gives us 2 years. 2 years for all of our market to figure out how exactly they're going to be trading with who and what and how. So all the import, output duties and taxes are going to have to be sorted out. All the different border stuff's going to be sorted out. How are we going to do basically every system that goes back and forth between, we're going to have to sort it within 2 years, which is difficult. And the idea is, if we're not holding on to the current trade agreements, we're going to have to create new ones. So then you hear with Trump and China, there's so much back and forth trade agreements and tariffs, it's hard to ever get to get sorted out. And to do it in 2 years, it's taken us 2 years to decide if we want to leave Brexit.
Anyway, so.
Yeah. So we want longer, and European Union aren't willing to give us longer. So we're in a bit of a bind. And the more we push it back, the less time we have, and it's just getting worse and worse. If we do strike our deals, they obviously won't come into effect until the 1st of January 2021, which would be fine if we manage to strike them in time. Some people think that we can strike them really quickly, and we want to implement them now as well. So there's also, we have to wait until the 1st of January. So there's a weird back and forward. Mm-hmm. The free movement would happen until then as well, so we'd still get immigrants in and out as freely as they are right now. We couldn't implement any stopping. So that's one of the big things that's stopping the agreement going through. There is the option that the EU would leave without a deal. So that would essentially mean the deal that Theresa has agreed with the EU, we just don't take it. We don't accept any of the stuff, and we just go hard cut. Our borders are shut. We're going to make a new trade agreements. It's going to start from now. But that would give you a massive time of uncertainty, and
it also doesn't really create good relationships.
It doesn't. There's argument that, for example, Germany, UK's Germany's third biggest export. Mm-hmm. So we're a big market to them. So they would want to get a trade agreement. Same with France. We're a big export to them, and we're close, and we already have a number of measures in place. So to remove those and not have them implemented wouldn't only just affect Britain. It would massively, but it wouldn't only affect Britain. However, that would also give places like Germany a bit more of a power play, because we need them more than us.
They could do whatever they wanted to do, so they're in control.
It would allow us to have better agreements with places like Canada and China and America, because we can then negotiate our own agreements.
What are ban lists?
So it took 7 years. I think it was 7 years for the EU to decide an agreement with Canada. 7 years, and that's Canada. They say yes to everything. Yeah. They're polite.
We're on the suspended list.
Oh, there you go. There's all this weird stuff. So we'd be able to sort that out. And other things that the hard Brexit would stop no one would have right of residence, no citizens. Mm-hmm. So if you're not a citizen of UK, you would not be able to be resident, but vice versa. All UK citizens in other parts of Europe wouldn't be legally allowed to stay there under the sort of current laws.
So would it be like a mass...
You'd think it'd be a mass exile, but I guess that'd be the hard Brexit, and that's where they'd have to come up with some sort of plan. There'd be food shortages potentially, because we wouldn't have a trade for the food. We'd have medical shortages, and because of the NHS, the way we operate, that would put lives at risk, immediate lives at risk. So, for short shelf life medicine. Can
it just be
medicines?
Can it just be let's just redo this?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me talk a little bit more about why it's still at kind of stalemate, and then I'll talk about what we can actually do. Okay. What our options are.
This doesn't seem like a good thing. It just seems like a mess.
It seems to be everything's. It's crazy. So if we had that hard thing, the trade would include new tariffs, and it'd just be mental. Yeah. Another massive point which people keep bringing up is the backstop. Have you heard of the backstop?
No.
All right. So the UK is unique in the fact that, the Great Britain is unique in the United Kingdom. Fuck, I keep getting that wrong. Anyway, Wales, England, Scotland are an island. No borders of anyone else other than ourselves. Okay. However, we do have Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland has a big border, 180 kilometres. Well, not that big, but, big for us. I think it's 180. With 310 kilometres, not 180. With Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, which is in the EU. Okay. And this brings up an issue that's very kind of close to home of us being in Texas. It has nobody wants a hard-walled border. Yeah. So if you've heard of the IRA, there's been lots of sort of fighting in the past, for hundreds of years between Northern Ireland through this, who's part of Britain, who's not, who's part of like mainland Ireland, where's the line, number of religious things as well, but all that sort of fighting. And to put a hard wall up there, people believe that would just go back to those type of ways, and nobody wants that. European Union was it, Brexit, people that want it remain and leave, nobody wants this. So what do you do here? You can't have an open border, because what it creates is one location where trade is cheaper. You can just drive a van across the country and sell it. You don't have customs, you don't have border patrol, you don't have anything limiting someone just going to Ireland and then walking into Northern Ireland and then flying across. You know how you did it, like that visa process you had to go through to get into the Netherlands to be able to fly to France easily? That wouldn't exist. Yeah. And to open that up, two things happen. One, we don't get the security that we're looking for through the Brexit. But secondly, it means that Northern Ireland and Ireland has an increase in transport, an increase in its trade. Therefore, it gets built up. But on top of that, Northern Ireland will gradually move more towards being part of Ireland, because they have this unique link. And then over time, could it become more as part of the EU? And then we lose Northern Ireland, and nobody knows how to answer this question right now. Okay. Nobody wants a hard wall. Nobody wants to have to secure it and put customs up, because you just avoid it. So nobody wants to have to patrol this, but nobody also wants, because all it does is basically give you a back door to Europe. So how can you cut yourselves off but then create a back door? It doesn't make any sense. No. So there's a big issue there.
Northern Ireland, not Ireland, that was part of the EU. It wasn't Ireland, it was Scotland we were in.
I was about to say, because I don't remember Northern Ireland going on about this, but I was like, you know what, I don't know, Scotland. So yeah, okay, thanks. You're welcome. Did you just look at a map and see where you were on the map?
No, I looked at a map to see where Dublin was.
You were in Dublin, that's Ireland.
No. I was in...
We've spoken about the Northern Ireland and Ireland divide before in this, have we not?
Yes. Okay. But for some reason, none of it made sense.
Yeah, so what I was saying about, essentially, because you wouldn't have the control checks on the border, you could ship it to Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland would have to ship that to the UK, but then there'd be new checks implemented there, because these things are come from the EU. So it'd just be implementing more stuff. If no deal has come to, or no trade agreements have made in the future, this would happen indefinitely. So, for example, if we did leave, but we didn't get a new deal with Germany, but Germany transports something to Republic of Ireland, it could just get transported to Northern Ireland easily with no checks. Yeah. But then the UK would have to check, or it could just be used in Northern Ireland. So it's a real issue. Like, the UK is very much against having a border wall, but it creates a huge amount of issues. The only other way of getting around it, or many ways, is either having a technical solution, which no one quite knows how we would get around that yet. It's maybe not invented to say such it, or a trusted trader agreement where you just have to have faith, and it'd be mutual recognition of the laws, and it's hard to believe that would happen. Yeah. Okay, so that's what's going on. Essentially, that's why we're at a stalemate right now. At the moment, we were meant to leave on the 29th of March. That was delayed to the 12th of April. It has been further delayed now until the 31st of October, where the EU has allowed us to make a decision by then.
Extensions past that.
Potentially extension. Potentially you could keep asking for extensions.
Okay.
Theresa May would like to get this all sorted out. What day is it? 7 days ago. So then, because there's the elections for the EU happen this month, or June, and on top of that, we also have our annual payments or like membership fees due. So we're going to now have to pay our membership fees for this year, on the following year, whichever one it is. And we're going to have to be involved in the election process, which we don't want, because it's just funds and money, and basically a position potentially made that isn't going to exist in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of issues there. That doesn't look like that's going to happen. So the 31st of October this year is our new deadline date.
Okay.
Mother Teresa, Theresa May, was originally a Remain. She did not want to do this, so she has taken on this as a more of a professional. I wouldn't say courtesy, but professional role. She wants to run the country. She wants to be. She's a political figure. She's going to do what's right for the country.
Yeah.
But she is, in essence, against this happening.
Okay.
She has had a lot of people go up against her. The Labour Party, which is our second party, compared to our Conservative Party, have been given a lot of negative feedback. Again, she's just playing with the cards that she was dealt. So it's not really on her, but she's working her best. I'm not by all means an advocate for her, but you've got to understand that nobody could do this job. I don't believe.
Yeah. I think that's almost better though, because then if you had somebody that was hardcore for it, then it's like a little bit.
Yeah, but she's still running it, because she's still running it as though she's for it though.
Okay.
Because you have to, because if you don't, then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
She's still saying no, we can't have another referendum and other stuff. Because this is what the law states. The law states, as a democratic vote, we voted for this to happen. We cannot go against that because the people have spoken. Essentially.
That's hard to do.
Yeah. The Labour Party don't want to either. They want to Remain, and they're very much pushing against her. But they're also being so much the other way that no, we don't want this, we don't want that. That not only makes her look bad, so they can win the next election, which is what they want anyway, but it's also this sort of slow way of just trying to somehow push it towards not happening.
Yeah.
Which nobody's sure that can not happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a bit up in the air right now. Even the politicians, newsreaders, everyone's not sure what's going to happen.
Okay.
It's a very strange situation, because there are people who won't budge on certain aspects and who aren't coming up with solutions to these problems, or at least the people who aren't being listened to. It is the voted in members of parliament who are getting to decide, and whether they're right or wrong or stand for the people correctly, it's still just voices that aren't creating, better ways of doing this. It's a strange one. I don't know where I stand on it. After reading up some of this, I'm like, okay, well, I understand why we want to leave.
Yeah.
But unless we can implement things before we do, I don't want to. So unless we do get that transition time where we can make sure things are right before we do, why we want to. And I don't know, European Union are being very much like, no, you cannot do that. This is, you are either with us or this is what you must face, which I feel like our true union of countries who want to kind of benefit everyone should be like, okay, you want to make it on your own? Yeah, okay, there you go. Go try, be encouraging. Go try and make it on your own. We will aid you where we can, but you have to understand we will not provide you with, we're not going to make it easy for you. You have to work for this. We're not just going to give you the same trade deals, but you don't have to pay us anymore. There will be a back and forth. We still need what's best for these 27 other nations, not just what's good for you and, that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's what you would think they should be, but I can understand it's...
relationships should already be there.
Yeah.
It's like we want to help you survive. We want to...
But in the same sense, you don't want to... It's the pride thing of they don't want to... Again, if they put forward the staple, the idea of, yeah, you can leave and you can get all the benefits and none of the bad stuff. What precedence does that set for all these other nations? So it's,
yeah, they all can leave.
Yeah, well, Germany probably would. Germany are one of the biggest funders of the place, and so is France. Why would they? So it's interesting. It's a weird, tough subject. But I'm glad I've researched it because I've learned a little bit more.
Good.
Here's some things if there is a deal with the EU.
Okay.
UK citizens living in the UK and UK citizens in the EU. So EU citizens in the UK. The agreement between the UK and the EU says that there's about 3.2 million EU citizens in the UK. As well as citizens of Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, other places. And they'll be able to carry on living and working in the UK with no change to their rights and their laws, and according to the UK laws. They'll basically be allowed to live here. Still won't be citizens, but they'll be allowed to live here. UK citizens in the EU will also retain their current rights in the EU following a small and simple administration procedure. So essentially, if we have the deal that's currently in place, that's what would happen. That did have the cut-off date being 29th of March, but I'm assuming for the people covered by the rules, so if you come in after that date, that won't necessarily apply to you. Okay. Babies born after that date in these locations to people who have qualified under these rules will be included. Babies created by the people who have come in after those laws wouldn't be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And EU citizens who legally want to become residents of the UK will be able to leave for up to 5 years without losing their rights. So if you've come to the UK, become a citizen, and you leave, you can leave up to 5 years before you come without having to lose your citizenship.
Okay.
French, whatever. So it's pretty good. Yeah. Let's see what other questions we have. Big ones. Will I need a visa to travel the EU? No. So in the deal, EU citizens, UK nationals will continue to be able to travel freely with a passport or identity card until the end of the transition period, which is December 2020. And after this period, the transition period we spoke about, the EU Commission have also visa-free travel for UK nationals coming to EU for short stays, so holidays. Longer stays, as long as you could do the same, as long as we allowed short stay, which I don't know if we would, so we might have to have that. We will have to pay a small fee to travel to the UK, but like $10 a year to be able to do this. If you want to stay for longer, that's obviously going to be a visa process. Will the transition period be extended? It can be extended. Yeah, if both sides, the European Union and UK, agree, we can extend that transition period beyond December 2020. That would continue the backstop or the issue we would have with the Northern Ireland. So you can if both sides agree to the transition, but EU currently aren't agreeing to transition. And in addition, that issue with Northern Ireland would stay in place. What happens if there's a no-deal Brexit, which is more of the worry if this doesn't happen and we get forced to leave the EU? So the Prime Minister, Theresa May, has said that the EU citizens in the UK will be able to stay here even if there's no-deal Brexit. If there was a no-deal Brexit, the EU nationals with a right to permanent residence here, it would be granted if they've lived here for 5 years.
Okay.
So if they've lived here for 5 years, it would be given that right to stay here anyway. Brits living in the EU, this is uncertain. We don't know.
Yeah.
It could happen. We don't actually know. It's going to depend on individual countries a little bit more. And it depends if we'd registered for residency already. And the rules of this are undetermined really at the moment. Needing a visa, we can leave up to 90 days. Will not want to apply for a visa any time longer than that. You will have to have a visa to travel through Europe. However, this isn't, again, certain. This is something that's sort of in place currently, but may be voided by the leaver of the UK. So it's unsure how that even works, which is, again, crazy. Health rights. The no deal would mean that current reciprocal healthcare shared between UK and EU 27 countries would no longer apply. If you could send health insurance premiums would soar to UK citizens who needed healthcare on holiday abroad, which is a lot more than people think. Yeah. And the Britons who hold the European health insurance card, it would be no longer valid within the EU. So we would lose that entirely, and health insurance would be crazy, and there's a lot of stuff that would go on there. Yeah. What would happen to all the EU laws enforced in the UK? All existing EU laws would be copied across to UK law to prevent legislative black holes, because that could cause some major issues. the UK government then can decide over a period of time which ones it wants to keep in, change and ditch.
So it would just be copied over immediately and then...
Yeah, they'd be enforced until we decide what to do with them, essentially. Which is it's fine.
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's some of the big questions within those rules. Would we be able to join the EU again if we did leave? Ooh, nobody again knows for sure.
Yeah.
Would we have to start from scratch? Would we have to sort of, it's like join a sorority. You have to haze yourself in, and you have to work, or any company, you have to work your way up from mailboy up to president. To part of the chair. It's not an easy process. Sorority. Why did I go sorority when I could have gone any business in the world? Don't know why that was crossing my mind. So it's interesting. I'd like to know what happens. According to some studies, how much will it cost is quite a big, interesting thing. So apparently, the EU are asking for something like 39 billion
to leave.
Damn. So that's gonna. I'm not exactly 100% sure what's covered, but that's a number that's been thrown out there. If I'm getting this right. A 39 billion divorce bill will cover things like pension payments to the EU officials, the cost of relocating London businesses-based EU agencies, and outstanding EU budget committees. So basically, the stuff to do with the European Union as a structure, as an entity, all that stuff is going to cost 39 billion, apparently. Or a cost to us 39 billion. But the exact calculation of the share of that depends on exchange rates and interest rates, etc. So it could turn out to be a lot more than we get. If we had a no-deal Brexit, though, we believe that we would have to pay substantially less than that.
You just walk away.
And it would just be done on obligation, like national obligation or strict international legal obligation. We have to pay for some of that, obviously, because then we'll have, it is the way it works, because they've helped us, we help them. In the future, if we want sort of any chance to join in, or, we don't want to be like, well, you owe us this, or, you didn't help us pay here, blah, blah, blah. The economy is going to, I could go into heaps of it. I don't think we want to or need to go into a lot of it. There is things like pensions and investments and mortgages, which could be greatly affected. Maybe not your state pension, but, through other companies, many, many legal matters, because all lawyers won't have the right to be able to practice in different countries. Where they have some form of legal rights to now, you'd have to recertify yourself in different countries. The Court of Justice would apply to some things, but not to others. So we wouldn't have to go to the European Court of Justice. They wouldn't have much power over what we do, but we still want to implement those laws. So it's weird if you have the law, who's implementing that new one now. And there's a whole heap of stuff, and I would recommend anyone who's interested to go and look at it a little bit more, because I don't want to go on much more than an hour talking about this stuff. But there is one last thing we need to cover, and that is, can we stop this? Should we stop this? So, as of November, or was it January this year? November last year, January this year, the European Union has said, we will allow Britain to stop this, continue in the EU with no punishment, no payment required, no reprimand, nothing. Yeah, exactly. There'd be no effects other than you just, okay, we're part of this, cool. Yeah. So that is on the table for Britain.
Okay.
That is there. Will we do that? It's hard to say. As in, how can a government say, okay, you know what? We have had the population vote. We have done something that has built our nation, and we have listened to you all. But these 420 people are going to go against everything that the nation has said, and we're going to stay.
I mean, it's the same thing as.
It's politically, it's morally, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And we had the vote. We had 30 million people, out of a potential something like 45 vote. And 16 million of them at least voted to leave.
But what happens if people make a bad decision when they vote? Not saying that it was.
Well, yeah, as a lot of people are saying that, it's like, people weren't informed. People didn't know what they were voting for. People didn't know the consequences of what they were voting for. But why is that?
Any reason to take that away from them?
Yeah, so it's like if I open a hall up to 100 people and I'll say, hey guys, come over here, fill out a survey, and you get this envelope. All right, and 10 people do it. You know, and inside that envelope's $100. And I was like, oh, no, I want to take the survey now. I was like, well, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You know, it's done now. This survey's over. I've got my results. You know, I'm not going to allow you open to opportunity just because now you want to change the outcome. You know, that was a really bad analogy, but you get the idea.
I do.
You've been given the opportunity, which is great. You have the opportunity, which many countries don't. And then you've gone, oh, sugar, I didn't like what turned out there. I should have done this. Well, yeah, you should have. And, you know, it's like these same people don't go in and vote for Parliament and then they moan about who we have in Parliament anyway. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird.
I mean, I understand.
So we can. Will we? You'd have to change the law in Britain, and they're against that because it loses a lot of integrity. But maybe losing integrity is worth it.
I mean, all I'm going to say is I read something that said that Donald Trump was on board with Brexit. So that should be a sign.
The interesting thing is there's lots of mirroring kind of situations going on. And it's, if you go back to Madsen and Hamilton, who decided your declaration, they had two different views on it or whatever, and Hamilton wanted to kind of sovereignize everything and Madsen wanted to kind of keep it state controlled, and whatever's happening there is kind of happening here. You know, you've had to the point where the federal government has taken more control off the states, you know, and that's essentially what's happening or happened in Europe. However, it's happened over a lot shorter period of time. And now you're having places here like, well, fuck, we don't want this guy running our country and our state. And over time, potentially, you never know, states might want to peel away from the US. And it's things like Trump and how he's acting is going to cause that a lot more. Like, because these states are, like, if you go to California, it is primarily Democratic state, right? I'm pretty sure it's significantly Democratic. And they are, second largest state populace-wise, I think? I have no idea. I think they are. Large. They might even be the largest state. So the largest state of the largest people, some of the world, you know, some of the biggest products, at least media-wise, comes from there. Is getting controlled by this guy they didn't vote for, and it seems, why would they do that? You know, it doesn't make any sense. They voted someone in who they believe is a Democrat, and then ruling on top of that, even thinking about it now, it doesn't make much sense. You know, really. And these things that are happening with UK, they should learn, because the last thing you want is for us to go through this process and then you guys try it in 100 years' time, or 10 years' time, or 50 years, whenever it is, and have the same struggles. So you should pay close attention. And the second thing, how Donald Trump was put into government. No one thought it was going to happen. The media was like, that's not going to happen.
That's one thing. It's like, that's when I was like, I know how that, like, similar situation where it's like, that's not going to happen. But because of that, it pushed everybody who would normally not vote to go vote. And it happened.
Did you vote?
Yeah. But then the people who, like, were like, it's not going to happen, I don't have to vote, didn't. And then it's like, it did.
And, and it was the people who wanted hope that voted for him. You know, it's the same people that voted to leave because they didn't feel like they were benefiting from anything. They felt like and it was weird because someone who's very corporate somehow convinced the people that what he was going to provide was a non-corporate America, essentially. You know, I don't know how he managed that.
I have no idea.
You know, I'm going to bring the steel back to America. I was like, well, why? You know, you're going to benefit from somehow, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's the same principle, you know. It's the masses are people who don't have money. You have to keep them happy. You have to give them hope. You have to give them at least a feeling of control. Because otherwise you have a revolt, which is what you've got. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in 2020, see if he gets re-elected. Because science would say he won't by a massive amount. But, you know, going by the principle of, if we had a new referendum, we would vote to stay.
Yeah.
You know? But will we? I have no idea.
Yeah. You still have that group of people who
Well, I mean, as in, I don't know enough of the politics, but has he done anything politically bad? Or, like, bad for the country?
I think everything's just at a standstill. I think. I
don't know, and it's maybe something you can maybe do a topic on one time, like how Trump has affected America. That'd be a controversial topic.
Yep. It sure will.
Anyway, I won't go on for this one too much longer. Do you feel like you know a little bit more about Brexit?
Yes. It makes a lot more sense why I'm still hearing the name 3 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's insane that I'm still hearing the name 3 years later, but it makes sense why.
Mm-hmm.
So.
There was, I should say, there's been a number of other votes, and if you're in the UK listening to this, there's a lot more news that we didn't cover, and small things happening every day. But I wanted to put more of a broad stroke of how the Americans could listen, or anybody else could listen, myself included, and at least be able to form some opinion, without being too integral.
Yeah.
Alright, we're not going to do shits and hits because I need a drink because my throat's getting dry.
Okay.
Alright, hit us up at the Mumblecast, Twitter, Instagram. Send us your Brexit memes / send us anything, please. Want somebody. Let us know if this helped you understand Brexit at all. That'd be really interesting. We'd like to know, although this is poorly researched, which I made sure I mentioned twice. We like to make sure we're giving you guys some sort of information, at least one wee bit of tidbit you can take away to tell someone. Alright, well, in that case, I've been Liam.
And I'm Kayla.
And this is the Mumblecast.
Bye.
Bye.